Hello and welcome to the podcast. This is Ron's Amazing Stories. We have stories that should thrill you a little and chill you a little.
It's amazing.
What you'll hear are adventures sent in by you guys, classic stories from the pulp mags, and episodes from the golden age of radio. We have special segments like Ghost Stories with Sylvia.
That's amazing.
And These Are Your Stories. So settle in for the next hour and enjoy the show. One more thing. You just might want to prepare yourself to be taken away from today.
Another 5-minute mystery.
This 5-minute mystery is being brought to you by classic science fiction and the word fantastic. Our stories are so fantastic, you don't need a hobby. The hobby is listening to our stories.
That's just stupid.
Yes, it is. But it filled this break.
Yes, it did.
The entrance to the Lawrence house on Center Street is lighted by an unshielded bulb. Beneath it stands a policeman. Suddenly a woman comes running up the porch steps.
What's the matter? Has something happened?
You live here, ma'am?
I'm Mrs. Lawrence's personal maid and housekeeper. I've worked for her for years.
Knew her pretty well, then.
Of course. What do you mean, knew her?
I'm sorry to have to tell you this, ma'am, but Mrs. Lawrence was murdered tonight, a couple of hours ago.
Murdered? Let me go in there. Let me go in.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Anything I can do to help, I'll be glad to do.
Yes, there is one thing you can do. Take me to the police station. Murder, is it? Well, I'll tell a thing or two now. And that's how it was, Inspector. I went out for a couple of hours tonight. It was my regular night out. And when I came back, that policeman refused to let me in.
I see. Well, Miss...
Just call me Agnes, please, sir. People have for so long now.
All right, Agnes. Now tell me. How long were you gone tonight?
Not more than a couple of hours, Inspector.
I see. Everything was all right when you left?
Perfectly. Everything was fine, except that I never did like the idea of her seeing him again. I believe she was expecting him tonight, after I'd left.
And, just who is him?
Why, her husband, I mean. They were divorced some years ago. He was a friend.
And, Mrs. Lawrence was seeing her husband again?
The last few nights, sir. All of a sudden, unexpected-like, Mrs. Lawrence came in one night and told me her husband was coming for dinner. I told her then I didn't like it.
Was there any trouble?
Not a bit, sir. In fact, things went too well. In fact, I believe Mrs. Lawrence was getting a bit soft on him again, and after all these years, too.
Tell me, where does he live?
Over in Cranville. He's lived there for over a year now.
That's about 15 miles away, isn't it?
That's it, sir.
Well, he could have driven that and been back in time for an alibi. Tell me, did anyone else know that Mr. and Mrs. Lawrence had become friendly again?
Not a soul, sir. It was a secret that just the three of us knew. But if you want my opinion, it was him that poisoned her. Must have been him. There was the very devil in that man.
Agnes, up to a point, I believe you're right. But because of just one thing, one mistake in your story, I'm going to hold you for the murder of Mrs. Lawrence.
The inspector has a good reason for holding Agnes for murder. Do you know what it is? We'll tell you in just a minute. But first...
Okay, call me stupid, but I have no idea what mistake she made.
Well, Ron, I agree you are in fact quite stupid, but I too missed the clue. Perhaps we should listen to it again.
I doubt that would help, and I wouldn't want to subject the listeners to that again. Also, I found Agnes quite pretentious.
Agreed. She can grate mold off cheese. Shall we listen to the solution?
Do we have any choice?
Not really.
And now, back to our 5-minute mystery and the murder of Mrs. Lawrence.
Me? Murder? I wasn't even home when she died.
Agnes, I know it was you who murdered Mrs. Lawrence. When you saw her and her husband becoming friendly again, You believed it would affect your inheritance. How do I know you're the murderer? For just one good reason, Agnes. I specifically gave orders that the method of murder would not be discussed with anyone. You yourself said that Mrs. Lawrence was poisoned. Only one person could have known that, the murderer himself.
Poisoned. Might have helped if we had known that.
Yes, these mysteries tend to leave things out and expect us to solve them with no clues.
Well, these stories are just fillers used to advertise, and the content, well, just wasn't their thing.
That, my friend, is abundantly clear.
It's that you said.
Hello, and welcome to the podcast. Today's show is really a hodgepodge of stories.
Ron, is hodgepodge really a word?
Yep, and the definition fits perfectly. A confused mixture. We have a UFO story that makes no sense, followed by a spirited ghost pirate who wants to party. Then we take a trip around the world in 72 days, 6 hours, 11 minutes, and 14 seconds.
Strangely specific, but whatever.
It is. Our featured story is out there and is titled First Contact. Then we're going to end the show with a quick edition of Johnny, is it true, documented, or not?
That does sound amazing.
It should. Now, let's put the world on hold with this one from Audible. Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. Audible has sponsored the show now since July of 2019. We have reviewed more than 140 audiobooks, and the list keeps growing. Did you know that Audible has over 200,000 books available? And a lot of those are included in the free catalog. Audible is amazing, and it is the perfect companion to Ron's Amazing Stories. If you like this podcast, you're going to love Audible. So what am I listening to? The Day the Earth Stood Still, Selected Stories of Harry Bates, narrated by William Kuhn. Now, you might be thinking that this is based on the 1951 or 2008 film. You would be wrong. Before these movies were ever made, the story Farewell to the Master first appeared in the October 1940 issue of Astounding Stories. It became the basis for the 1951 film. The story was morphed from Bates' original conception into a cerebral science fiction cinematic classic. Much of the sense of wonder of that original story was lost in its adaptation to film. In fact, a fundamental characteristic that can be found in the stories by Bates is a sense of wonder. While other authors' stories generally held an optimistic view of humankind, Harry Bates' sensibilities were often much darker. He dealt with philosophy, including the metaphysical, with mind-exploding ideas that predated similar explorations by such authors as Robert Heinlein and Philip K. Dick. In Farewell to the Master, Cliff Sutherland, a freelance reporter, is determined to get more photos of the giant robot that stands as silent sentinel over his dimensional space-traveling ship. Cliff is determined to have an overnight vigil to get behind the mystery of the slain alien known as Klaatu. Here's a clip from that story.
A slight rustling sound came from speakers hidden in the ceiling above, and at once the noises of the crowd lessened. The recorded lecture was about to be given. Cliff sighed. He knew the thing by heart, had even been present when the recording was made, and met the speaker, a young chap named Stillwell. "Ladies and gentlemen," began a clear and well-modulated voice. But Cliff was no longer attending. The shadows in the hollows of Gnute's face and figure were deeper. It was almost time for his shot. He picked up and examined the proofs of the pictures he had taken the day before and compared them critically with the subject. As he looked, a wrinkle came to his brow. He had not noticed it before, but now, suddenly, he had the feeling that since yesterday something about Gnute was changed. The pose before him was the identical one in the photographs. Every detail on comparison seemed the same, but nevertheless the feeling persisted. He took up his viewing glass and more carefully compared subject and photographs, line by line. And then he saw that there was a difference. With sudden excitement, Cliff snapped 2 pictures at different exposures. He knew he should wait a little and take others, but he was so sure he had stumbled on an important mystery that he had to get going, and quickly folding his accessory equipment, he descended the ladder and made his way out. 20 minutes later, consumed with curiosity, he was developing the new shots in his hotel bedroom. What Cliff saw when he compared the negatives taken yesterday and today caused his scalp to tingle. Here was a slant indeed, and apparently no one but he knew. Still, what he had discovered, though it would have made the front page of every paper in the solar system, was after all only a lead. The story, what really had happened, he knew no better than anyone else. It must be his job to find out, and that meant he would have to secrete himself in the building and stay there all night. That very night, there was still time for him to get back before closing. He would take a small, very fast infrared camera that could see in the dark, and he would get the real picture and the story. He snatched up the little camera, grabbed an air cab, and hurried back to the museum. The place was filled with another section of the ever-present queue, and the lecture was just ending. He thanked heaven that his arrangement with the museum permitted him to go in and out at will. He had already decided what to do. First, he made his way to the floating guard and asked a single question, and anticipation broadened on his face as he heard the expected answer. The second thing was to find a spot where he would be safe from the eyes of the men who would close the floor for the night. There was only one possible place, the laboratory set up behind the ship. Boldly he showed his press credentials to the second guard, stationed at the partitioned passageway leading to it, stating that he had come to interview the scientists, and in a moment was at the laboratory door. He had been there a number of times and knew the room well. It was a large area, roughly partitioned off for the work of the scientists engaged in breaking their way into the ship, and full of a confusion of massive and heavy objects, electric and hot air ovens, carboys of chemicals, asbestos sheeting, compressors, basins, ladles, a microscope, and a great deal of smaller equipment common to a metallurgical laboratory. 3 white-smocked men were deeply engrossed in an experiment at the far end. Cliff, waiting a good moment, slipped inside and hid himself under a table half buried with supplies. He felt reasonably safe from detection there. Very soon now the scientists would be going home for the night. From beyond the ship he could hear another section of the waiting queue filing in, the last, he hoped, of the day. He settled himself as comfortably as he could. In a moment the lecture would begin. He had to smile when he thought of one thing the recording would say. Then there it was again, the clear, trained voice of the chap Stillwell. The foot scrapings and whispers of the crowd died away, and Cliff could hear every word in spite of the great bulk of the ship lying interposed. "Ladies and gentlemen," began the familiar words, "the Smithsonian Institution welcomes you to its new interplanetary wing."
This audiobook includes other stories written by Harry Bates. Alas, All Thinking is a story of one man's journey to the end of humanity. A Matter of Size takes the listener for a journey of scale and the meaning of identity. And finally, Death of a Sensitive is the tale of a psychic who is thought to be mad with his benevolent treatment towards the cockroaches that infest his apartment. This one is a forgotten classic that is presented in this audiobook for the first time in over 50 years. In all, there are 4 classic short novels from the legend that is Harry Bates, who made the golden age of science fiction what it was. Now, if this audiobook appeals to you, head to audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories, and you can have The Day the Earth Stood Still selected stories of Harry Bates for free. Now, here's what Audible has set up for us. They are offering a free audiobook in 30 days to give you the opportunity to check out their service. This also gains you access to the included catalog, which is updated constantly with new titles. So to download your free audiobook, go to audibletrial.com/Ron's Amazing Stories. If you do, you'll be helping the show out. Thank you, Audible. And now, it's time for your stories.
These are your stories, sent by you, for you.
Our first story comes from Marcella Cunningham. This is one of the strangest we've had and certainly stands out as original. I received this on the website from a blocked email. That just means that whenever I send a reply, it just got kicked back to me. I have no sense on whether this story is true, fiction, or what. As an editor, I have many tools to make sure it's original, meaning not plagiarized. And from that aspect, we're good to go. You'd be surprised at the number of stories I get that are stolen from internet posts on Reddit. I like this story and I want to read it. To Marcella, I say, thank you for sending this in. I did have to gently edit it for time and reading purposes. Ron, thank you for your podcast. I look forward to it each week. I used to listen on the radio on Sunday night until you mentioned that you could be found on TuneIn Radio. I now listen to you there. I want to share an experience with you that I had with an old friend. I had a best friend named Becky in middle school who I lost contact with when she transferred in the 8th grade. 2 years later, I have a dream that I visited her new school and we sat in the back of her math class. In the dream, her teacher was a tall brunette with curly hair and wearing glasses. The next day, I get a message on Facebook from her, which was completely out of the blue because we hadn't spoken in months. She writes me to tell me how she's doing and that she's still having trouble with math. I've always been good at it, so I helped her with math and she helped me with English. I thought, how odd. I wrote her back and told her about my dream. Within seconds I got a reply. She freaks out and tells me that she sits in the back of her math class and her teacher fit the description I gave her from my dream perfectly. The next night I was out walking my dog around the neighborhood with a friend. We would occasionally look up to the sky in awe of the stars. I saw a fast-moving light like a meteor, but slower, although much faster than an airplane. Then it made an impossible 90-degree turn, first to the right, then to the left, and it disappeared. My friend and I both stopped, looked at each other, and said at the same time, "Did you see that?" A woman's voice from behind us spoke out. I sure did. I'd never seen anything like that before. We both turned, and standing there was a young woman who was tall, brunette, with curly hair and wearing glasses. She introduced herself as Mary. We talked for quite a while about what we had seen. Through our discussion, she mentioned that she was a teacher. I stopped in mid-sentence and mentioned my old friend's name. She was, in fact, Becky's math teacher. Was all of this coincidence? Why the UFO and why the strange connections? I renewed my friendship with Becky, and we're better friends than ever. I am now a junior in high school, and yes, I still help her with her math, and she still proofreads my English assignments. Marcella Cunningham from Parts Unknown. Well, that is an amazing story, Marcella. I felt kind of funny editing your story. I thought about contacting Becky to have her do it. That seems like a lot of coincidence to me, but really, who knows how the universe works? Thank you for your story. This next story is from Ara, who lives and works on the Grand Cayman Island. It is the largest of the Cayman Islands and is a British-occupied territory in the Caribbean. Ara's story takes place during the Heritage Festival, specifically Pirates Week, where they have days of mock pirate invasions and celebrate their culture and heritage. This is followed by District Heritage Days. These celebrations span 5 days, where each district celebrates their own unique traditions, artifacts, food, and people. The celebrations conclude with the invasion of Little Cayman, as the pirates make one last stop before heading out to sea for another year. Now, I did this research so Ara's story will make a bit more sense. He has titled it Night of Fright. It was night in Grand Cayman, and I was over at a friend's house playing video games after a long day of celebration. This was our country's Heritage Day, a day where we celebrate our past and live like our ancestors did. It was getting late, so I packed up my stuff and said goodnight to my friend Justin. I started my walk home. I live only about a mile away from him, so it's not too much for me to walk. I was about a third of the way through my journey and alone when I saw a guy about 30 to 40 years old, dressed in pirate regalia, walk right by me. He was walking with his head down and just passed by me without saying a word. Thinking it was someone who was just celebrating our Heritage Day, I thought nothing of it. As I continued my journey home, I noticed someone crossing me again. I looked up at the person and noticed that he too had on pirate's clothing. I took a closer look and realized that it was the same man that had passed me head down before. This time his eyes met mine, and I swear they were bright red. I also saw he had his sword drawn. His face was gaunt and white as a ghost. I said nothing and ran the rest of the way home. I'm not sure what I saw that night, but it was not from this world. Looking back, I think this ghost probably just wanted to see if his people were still celebrating what made our country what it is today. Ara from the Grand Cayman Island. Well, Ara, all I can say is chills. What a great and creepy story, and so well told. Thank you for sending this one in, and I guess the moral of this story is, if you're out during Pirates Week, be sure to carry a sword. Thank you, Ara. Yes, it is our amazing stories. But just what does that mean? We have segments for your stories, one for strange moments in history, and even one that plays clips from the golden age of radio to take us back in time. So what makes this segment different? Our Amazing Stories looks at people who did amazing things. So sit back and listen to this incredible tale. This time we're going to chat about Nellie Bly's trip around the world. In 1873, a French author named Jules Verne published a novel titled Around the World in 80 Days. You might have heard of it. The journey was by no means impossible, as all means of travel mentioned in the book were very real. But until the book had come out, no one ever anticipated that the journey would be made. However, in 1889, an investigative reporter attempted to prove that it could be done. She even managed to shave 8 days off the journey and meet Jules Verne himself. Nellie Bly had already become famous for her investigative reporting and her undercover reporting when she pitched the idea of the trip to her editors. With the book's success, Bly wanted to prove that the journey could be done in reality. And not just that, but she herself, a woman, could do it alone and in less time. Backed by her paper, The New York World, Bly set off on her adventure at 9:40 a.m. on November 14th, 1889. Contrary to her editor's beliefs, she packed light, extremely light, in fact, bringing along one pack the size of a modern-day carry-on. She traveled from New York to London, met Verne himself in Paris, bounced to Egypt, and then went to the Suez Canal and Japan, and of course, everywhere in between. Much to her surprise, Cosmopolitan magazine sent another reporter to race Bly, a woman headed around the world but in the opposite direction. When confronted by the other woman while in Japan on Christmas Eve, Bly was shocked to learn of her existence. In one of her dispatches to her paper, she recalled the encounter with a Japanese reporter. "Aren't you racing around the world?" he asked, as if I wasn't Nellie Bly. "Yes, quite right. I'm running a race with Time," I replied. "Time? I don't think that's her name." "Her?" I repeated. "Her? Poor fellow, he's quite unbalanced. And I was wondering if I dare wink at the doctor to suggest to him the advisability of making good our escape. Yes, the other woman. She's going to win. She left here 3 days ago." In the end, the other reporter ended up getting stuck on her way back to America from England, putting Nellie in the lead for good. She arrived back in the States before her competitor and became the first woman to make a solo trip around the world. Although her goal was 75 days, she arrived back in Jersey City 72 days, 6 hours, 11 minutes, and 14 seconds after she had left. How about that? Well, that's it for this edition of Our Amazing Stories. I hope that you enjoyed it. If you have any ideas for stories for this segment or want to write one of your own, please let me know. I would love to work with you on the project, and I want to hear any ideas you might have. Just use the contact page on the main website and we'll get it done. Thank you for listening to Our Amazing Stories. We have something special today. Our featured story comes from the science fiction OTR series, Dimension X. This story presents a problem that I think could happen with any alien first contact. Now, what is first contact? Simply put, it is the first meeting between peoples of two previously unknown cultures. How could this go down? Would it be peaceful? That is what our story addresses. It is titled, appropriately enough, First Contact, and it originally aired on September 9th, 1951.
Adventures in time and space, transcribed in future tense. The National Broadcasting Company, in cooperation with Street and Smith, publishers of astounding science fiction, bring you Dimension X.
Tonight's story, First Contact, by Murray Leinster. They had been in space 6 months now, moving with the incredibly faster-than-light speed of the overdrive. In 6 months, they had gone from Earth outward and outward to the crab-like nebula with the twin stars. A routine flight of exploration and scientific research.
Solid object about 90,000 miles away, sir.
Located, Dort. Exactly identified.
A small object, sir. Hey, Captain, I've never seen anything like this before. Whatever it is out there is coming toward us at an incredible speed and retreating to zero just as rapidly.
What's the mass of the object, Dort?
Well, it varies with the distance from us, sir.
Step up the scanners.
Well, nothing, sir. Absolutely nothing shows out there. And yet there must be something. Those alarms are foolproof.
Action stations, man all weapons. Condition of extreme alert in all departments immediately.
Captain, what is it?
Dort, I ran into the same thing once before on the Earth-Mars run. We were being located by another ship, and their locator beam was the same frequency as ours. Every time it hit, it registered as something solid and monstrous.
But, Captain, we're the only Earth ship in 18 light years around. How?
I didn't say it was another Earth ship out there, Dort.
Another race?
That's right. There's a spaceship out there, all right. But it's not manned by human beings.
It had been contemplated and speculated upon. Mathematically, it was almost a certainty that such a race existed. But in 18,000 Earth years, no human spaceship had ever encountered them. Now the situation was precipitated, and somewhere outside the Earth vessel there was an alien race. Of what shape? Of what quality? Of what psychology?
It's moving, sir. Heading right for us.
At that speed, we'll be in touch in 10 minutes. Heading right for us, huh? Just what we'd do if a strange ship appeared in our hunting grounds. Friendly? Well, maybe. We'll try to contact them. We have to do that. But friendly? Thank the Lord for the blasters.
They may not be hostile, sir.
Well, they may be. That's what I'm paid for. Put on this job for, to worry about the troubles that may never happen. To all hands, now hear this. A ship is approaching manned by an alien race. I'll give the signal for attack or defense if it be necessary. There'll be no move made unless I give the order. I do not wish to provoke trouble. Stand by.
Their ship is slowing down, sir. It's stopped.
Weapons Department, report. Weapons Department, report.
Alien ship remarked. Target fixed. Weapons alert.
Communications Department, report. Communications Department, report.
We're receiving a modulated short wave, sir. Frequency modulated. Apparently a signal. Not enough power to do us any harm.
We'll try to make some sense out of it. Report any progress to me immediately.
One thing in their favor, sir. They didn't attack immediately without question. They're trying to establish contact. That seems to indicate they're reasonable.
We'll see. What are they doing now? Can you make out the locator screen? Bring that power up.
They're doing something now, sir. There's a section of the hull opening. Probably an airlock, sir.
If they breathe there.
They're letting something out. Well, it's round. A bomb, sir?
Unknown object released from alien ship. Observed by Weapons Department and targeted.
Stand by.
See what they're doing, sir? They've left the object out there right where they were. And now they're withdrawing the ship.
There's no reason why that object couldn't be a bomb, Mr. Dort. Intended to let us think precisely as you're thinking right now.
I just have a hunch, sir. I think they're friendly. I think whatever it is out there is a means of communication.
You're probably right, but I won't gamble the ship on the probability.
Sir, I'd like to volunteer to go out there and look that thing over.
You understand whoever does examine it is expendable.
Yes, sir.
Requisition a lifeboat.
If it's all right with you, sir, I'd prefer just a suit with the drive in it. It's smaller and the arms and legs won't make me look like a bomb. And I'll carry a scanner, sir.
You may leave when you're ready.
Thank you, sir.
I'm all ready. Clear the lock and let me out. Department reporting to the captain. Mr. Dort located. Mr. Dort is targeted.
Stand by. If that object out there is a device to capture one of our people for observation and questioning, it'll be blown out of existence, including Mr. Dort. Stand by. Mr. Dort. Mr. Dort. Report.
Object, as you can see on the scanner, sir, is covered with many small horns, like the detonating horns of the obsolete mines formerly used in naval warfare.
Is that their purpose, do you assume, Mr. Dort?
I'm going to find out, sir. I'm going to grab one.
Mr. Dort.
I'm here, sir. I don't think this is a mine.
Circle it so we can see it completely through your scanner.
Deadlock, sir. Nothing to report that the scanner hasn't shown you. Oh, wait a minute, sir. A section of the outer hull seems to be opening. Do you see it?
Very good, Dort. Hold that.
I'm sure it's a communications device, sir.
It looks like it. Fix your scanner so it'll focus on that communications device. Return to the ship.
Communications Department. Progress report, please.
We've established communication, sir.
Is there a psychologist on the team down there with you?
Yes, sir. Mr. Burns is working with us.
Will both of you please report to the bridge at once?
Oh, you look tired, Dort.
We've established fairly satisfactory communication, sir. They seem to have highly developed thought patterns. We got a satisfactory translation from the machine on the fourth attempt. We can say almost anything we want to say to each other now. Of course, how much of what they tell us is the truth, we have no way of knowing.
Mr. Burns, you're the psychologist. What do you think?
Well, I don't know, sir. They seem to be completely direct. They haven't let slip even a hint of the tenseness we know exists. They act as if they were setting up a means of communication for friendly conversation, but, well, there's an overtone that...
Yeah? Well, Mr. Burns, I have a decision to make. On the one hand, opening contact with the friendly people of a vastly different culture could only be beneficial to us of Earth. On the other hand, if they're hostile, I ought to blast them out of existence without any other preliminaries.
Oh, but, sir, you can't...
I'm not talking to you, Dort.
It's not warranted yet, sir.
Yes. Now, hear this, all departments. Hear this, all departments. This ship is on an extended alert. Provisions will be made so that personnel can have maximum rest and nourishment.
Communication continued by means of the artificial language set up arbitrarily between the Earthmen and the aliens, decoded by the mechanical decoders. Dort disobeyed orders. He lived on powerful stimulants so that he could stay with the communications machine. Talking to the aliens.
Other people. Are we being received?
We are receiving your message.
The chief of this ship wishes to speak with the chief of your ship.
The message is heard by the chief of this ship. The chief of this ship communicates that he will hear the message of the chief of that ship.
Go ahead, sir.
People of the other ship, I'd like to say the appropriate things about this first contact of two dissimilar civilized races, and of my hopes that a friendly intercourse between the two peoples will result.
People of that ship, what you say is all very well, but is there any way for us to let each other go home alive?
That's all, sir. They've stopped sending.
Very direct people. Very direct.
But, sir, I don't follow. I didn't know what that meant. You know, is there any way for us to let each other go home alive?
It means what it says, Dort.
Sir, what's to stop us from just cutting communication and leaving, and they can do likewise?
What's to stop us? Simply that whichever ship leaves first will be followed by the other. If they find Earth and get back to their own planet and we don't know where that planet is, Earth will be completely at their mercy. If they leave first, we'll follow them. We'll attempt to find their home planet. Dort, could you swear to any decision that the policymakers on Earth will come to?
Sir, even if they do follow us, the closer we get to home, the more of our ships and weapons they'll face. They'd never get away.
Well, how do you know that they can't communicate with their home planet without returning?
We can't, sir.
How do you know they can't?
I don't, sir.
So that's the situation. We'll sit out here, facing each other, trying to outguess each other, until time wears us out. And we'll have to face the fact. Either they destroy us or we destroy them. Navigation officer, attention. Navigation officer, attention. Every star map on this ship is to be prepared for instant destruction.
The chief of this ship wishes to know whether the chief of that ship can suggest an answer to the problem concerning us both.
Do you want me to answer that, sir?
I'll answer it myself. Tell me when to talk.
Now, sir.
I am giving that matter personal attention. Every effort will be bent to the solution of this problem. Will you consider a temporary truce in the meantime?
What would a truce gain? Could we trust you? Would you trust us? I suggest that we continue as we have up to this particle of time.
I agree. Sign off, George.
Weeks went by, and during the weeks, the exchange of information continued without let-up.
What particle of time are the people on that ship at?
The resting time. All rest except myself and others on alert duty.
Same on this ship.
You people of that ship are very similar in many ways. Do you have a family?
I have a mate.
I have a mate and 3 offspring. It is too bad for them, as well as us, to have to kill each other.
This ship can't see any way out of it. Can that ship?
If we could believe each ship, yes. Our chief would like it. But we can't believe you, and you are afraid that we do not tell truth, although we do. This ship would trail you home if this ship were able to. That ship would do the same. But this ship feels sorry about it.
I believe you're a friend.
I share your belief and like you. But there is a possibility that you were put to make a trap for me. I will stop now and think it over.
Just sit down, Dort. Control yourself. We're all under tension. Doesn't do any good to pace like some caged animal.
Yes, sir.
All right, now, I've read the complete transcription of your conversations with this one alien. What does it prove, Dort?
Sir, these people are so much like us in their thinking. Well, sir, they're likable.
They're likable and they breathe oxygen. Their air is 28% oxygen instead of 20. But they could do very well on Earth. It'd be a highly desirable conquest for them. Dort, I'm as set against violence as you are. I don't see any way out of this. And I think we've got to break this status quo. So if in 70 hours we don't see any other way, then I have no further choice. I'll blow them to bits.
Will that ship receive communications? Will that ship receive communications?
This ship is listening.
It seems to me better to communicate than to sit by the machine silently.
I would have called you, but you signed off before.
The problem goes around and around. I find no answer.
Perhaps we could turn our thoughts to other things.
The psychologist of this ship tells us that you people on that ship have a threshold of tolerance to tension. He tells us that you will be forced to take one action or another in a period of less than 100 time particles.
I have no communication on this matter.
Well, this ship is not trying to extract unwilling information from that ship. A truth is mentioned in passing.
A report of this conversation will be carried to the chief of this ship.
It would be so. We are prepared.
If only the people of this ship could meet in direct contact with the people of that ship, it might be better.
We could not communicate then. The communications machine is too large to carry from place to place. In direct contact, the peoples of the two ships would be further apart than now.
That's true.
I am sad. Much that is pleasant has passed between us.
I am sad, too.
We are not yet ready for each other.
We are not yet ready for each other.
It's hard, isn't it, Doc?
Well, Captain, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were here, sir.
I've been here for quite a while. Eavesdropping, I'm afraid.
It's all right, sir. Nothing can be personal in a situation like this.
Yeah, that's right. How long is 100 time particles, Dort?
Pardon, sir?
That reference he made to us not being able to stand tension is interesting. Their psychologists seem to make more out of us than we do out of them, don't they?
Yes, sir. They hit the nail right on the head.
Yes, they did. I think, Dort, we'll just have to push our timetable up a bit. No further communication with the aliens under any circumstances. That's clear, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Sir, if they know so much about our psychology, isn't it possible that remark was intended to make us act more quickly?
Probable, Dort. Probable.
Well, why would they do that, sir? Why?
You tell me why, Dort.
All of a sudden, I have an idea, sir. That's crazy.
It doesn't matter how crazy. I'll listen to it.
Sir, I think these people are playing some kind of a joke on us.
Joke? A joke, Dort?
Yes, sir. Over and over again, I've noticed what I think is a sense of humor. A highly developed sense of humor. Do you recall when we went to all the trouble to set up a fictitious star map and then they just sent us back a mirror image of the same one? I think somehow they're playing a joke on us.
Well, maybe you're right. In which case, you've seen practical jokers, Dort. Their jokes aren't always funny. Sometimes they hurt people. All departments, man, instant alert. All departments, man, instant alert. Report instantly. Report instantly.
Weapons Department alerted.
Target, the enemy ship.
On target, sir.
Stand by. Fire!
They're gone, sir. Not a trace of them left. Not a tiny trace. Now we can go home.
Communications to Captain. Communications to Captain.
Report.
Sir, I'm picking up new signals. Same frequency as the original alien signals.
That's impossible. That ship was destroyed.
I'm receiving signals, sir.
Set the machine up. We'll be down there in a minute. Mr. Dort, come with me, please.
It's good to be on the way home.
Yes, it is good.
Do you suppose we'll ever figure out what happened to the other ship?
Never. A blinding flash and they were gone.
I suppose they couldn't figure a way out of the situation. An unstable people. They had no sense of humor to cope with the situation. They exploded themselves out of existence.
It seems reasonable.
They must have had powerful weapons to destroy themselves so completely.
Yes, what a shame.
In a way, I grew to like them.
This isn't meant for us, sir. I don't know what's happening, but I think we're overhearing a private conversation.
I understand, Dort. Be quiet, will you?
Many things might have come out of a relationship with that people.
They were describing a disease they call cancer. I think it is similar to the Fulgren syndrome. We might have helped them.
They might have helped us, too. Well, too bad. We'll never find them again, I think. The odds of such a chance meeting in the vast space of the whole universe. There are no figures for such odds, are there?
Turn it up, Dort. Turn it up louder.
That's all there is, sir. The signal stopped there. Sir, I don't know how, but somehow when we fired at them, we didn't destroy them, but we did set up a condition whereby they've become invisible to us and we've become invisible to them.
Captain to Engineering Department. Halt forward motion.
Captain, why are we stopping?
Listen, Dort, you say they're invisible. All right, they are. But they're not destroyed because we just heard them. They're out there somewhere. Invisible.
Well, you heard them, so they're heading for home. We're invisible to them, too, sir.
How do you know, Dort? How do you know this whole thing isn't a setup?
Well, suppose that's true, Captain. You heard their conversation. They weren't talking like any monstrous people. They seemed decent and warm, just as decent and warm as we are.
How do you know this conversation wasn't planned, deliberately set up for us to hear? How do you know that, Dort?
Yes, sir, you're right. They may be out there and they may not. They may be telling the truth or they may be trying to trick us. They may be friends or they may be the most deadly enemies.
You said they had a sense of humor, Dort. What a joke to play. To deliberately set up a situation where we wouldn't know fact from fantasy, truth from lie. Wouldn't that be a joke, Dort?
Yeah, but we don't know that they did that, sir.
And we don't know that they didn't. We don't know anything.
Sir, does that mean we never go home again?
I don't know. I have to think about it. I have to think about it.
That was an amazing story, and I think well beyond its years. First Contact was written in 1945 by Murray Leinster, and it is credited as being one of the first, if not the first, instances of a universal translator in science fiction. It won a Retro Hugo Award for Best Novelette in 1996. It originally appeared in the magazine Astounding Science Fiction. The author's real name is William Fitzgerald Jenkins. He wrote and published more than 1,500 short stories and articles, 14 movie scripts, and hundreds of radio scripts and television plays. Quite prolific. When the pulp mags began to diversify into particular genres in the 1920s, Leinster followed suit, selling jungle stories to danger trails, westerns to West and Cowboy, detective stories to Black Mask, horror stories to Weird Tales, and even romance stories to Love Story magazine under the pen name Louisa Carter Lee. He began his career as a freelance writer before World War I. He was born in 1895 and passed away in 1975. All in all, Jenkins did his part for the golden age of science fiction.
Johnny, is this true?
As you know by now, I like to surf the internet to find the strange and unusual. I do this in the name of the podcast, but the truth is, I would do it anyway, even if there was no podcast. What you're about to hear is...
Johnny, is this true?
I will tell you a story and then ask the question, did I make it up or is it true? Your job is to decide. Let's get started.
Johnny, is this true?
We have a short edition of Johnny, Is It True? Quick stories that are either documented or they're not. Can you tell the difference? Let's find out. Story 1. In 1885, a man received a letter from his brother in the mail. However, his brother had been dead for 13 years. Is this documented? Yes, it is. James Nicholson received a letter that his brother was mentally ill and soon would be coming to visit. When the man dug up his brother's coffin, he found it completely empty. Story 2. In 1948, strange distress calls from the SS Aurang were picked up off the coast of Indonesia. One voice was heard to say,
"All officers dead.
including the captain, lying in the chart room. What do you think? Documented? Again, it is. When another boat went to investigate the ship, they found the Outrang crew all dead, eyes open, faces staring towards the heavens. Story 3. In 1969 at Woodstock, Sharon Stone was at the 1 a.m. performance of Blood, Sweat, and Tears. She was asked up on stage to sing Spinning Wheel. Now, can you watch this one on YouTube? Not likely. Sharon was only 10 years old in 1969 and was, well, probably in bed. Story 4. Before April 15th, 1865, the day Lincoln was shot, Lincoln himself had a dream that might have predicted his fate. Now, is this documented? Yep. In his dream, Lincoln saw a soldier standing over a casket. When he asked who the man who died was, the soldier responded, "The President." How about that? Well, that's it for a very quick edition of Johnny, Is This True?
Not so many years ago, tomato soup and cream of tomato were unusual dishes, enjoyed very much, but not very often. Today, of all the soups in the world, tomato soup is the one most often served. Not because women have taken to making tomato soup frequently. No, on the contrary, few housewives ever attempt it anymore. There's just one reason for tomato soup's popularity, and it is this: the magic, matchless flavor of Campbell's tomato soup. There's a lively verve, a dashing zest about this flavor that people take to at once and come back to and enjoy again and again. The first racy taste of it has a way of arousing a desire to eat, and yet there's a pleasant feeling of satisfaction when the last spoonful is gone. So this soup is a happy choice for the main dish at lunchtime or at supper, and it also is a fine way to start the day's main meal. Serve it sometimes, too, as cream of tomato, made with milk instead of water. You can always be sure that it will be received with pleasure, because this, of all soups, is the one people like to have most often: Campbell's tomato soup.
That was episode number 537, and my thanks go out to Marcella Cunningham and Ara from the Grand Cayman Island. Such cool stories today, and I love pirates. I really do. If you want to follow the podcast or the blog, head to ronsamazingstories.com. There you will find any of the links I mentioned and how to contact us. Do you want to help the show? The best thing you can do is to tell your friends all about it, and please leave reviews or feedback wherever you listen. Clicking that follow or like button makes us grow. Thank you for listening, and I hope you come again to find out what are Ron's Amazing Stories.
All of the vintage audio used in the podcast is believed to be in the public domain. Ron's Amazing Stories does not own the rights to any of the old-time radio used here. If you hold the rights to any of the shows played, please contact us immediately at ronsamazingstories.com.